Drinks,
and movies.
movies, Saturday night. It's all happening.
It doesn't feel right until you're watching drinks and movies. Like it feels like something's off on a Saturday night until you're in the YouTube bubble with John and Mirren.
When it's officially Bearded Avengers assembled. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Drinks and Movies, the Saturday night show that really breaks down movies in obscure subgenres for the she's and gees of these two guys. How's it going there, Greg?
Man, it's been good. I'm technically, even though I'm home, I'm still on vacation, so I can't complain. So I've got a couple more days left. Although I don't know if you really call it vacation now that I'm back home because I've got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Yeah,
there's not much.
I kind of gauge my interest in summer vacation based on how interested I am to spend time with my own kids or how much I want other people's kids.
Right. You're like,
I slowly burn from one end of the candle to the other.
It's like I was like, oh, I'm not working tomorrow, and I was like, oh, that means I'm gonna be home all day. I was like, I'm still working. No, I love it. So it's great. So,
and you and I've both been on other live streams today. I was telling you before we went live that like I'm not used to drinking at 5 o'clock. Like I'm usually like the sun goes down kind of a person. And for Rod the Rican's birthday, I was on his Coast to Coast show drinking. Man, I pre-gamed a little too hard, maybe.
Well, I made the joke because you were on Rod's show. They ended the show, and then Old Wolf continued the after party on his channel. And so I hopped on because we have those contractual obligations that we can't hop on the same stream if we're talking, because then we'll talk movies and everyone will be annoyed. But I was like, your guys is the first 8, I was like, oh, cool. Like 8 o'clock, you guys were like, okay, yeah, hey, happy birthday, cool. I think I logged on at like 10:15. You guys were still going, and I'm like, I don't understand a word that any 6 of you are saying right now because there's so much chatter going around. So it was just a cluster. So I'm like, here goes.
Well, and to save you a little concern, I know we were thinking of doing a little Jeffrey watch. They have logged off. So
okay,
they've ended.
Okay.
Hour and 20 minutes in on Tony's show, plus an hour and a half on Rod's show.
Whew. It was good. We were gonna have to check out on my boy Jeffrey. So I told them all to come over if they ended the stream, come over in the chat. So I don't think that's gonna happen.
No, he's gonna be booting somewhere,
Yes,
absolutely. But let's say hello to the chat and then check in on the question that No Good wants to have answered. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, the highlight of the evening, we will never do better than this, is Bearded trumping Ruben. Cowabunga fam is dead.
In your face, Ruben. First in the chat. What do you got to say?
By my clock, he was almost an hour later. 6:30,
slipping.
7:20, 7:11.
You're slipping, Ruben. You're slipping. You've come complacent, as always been known as a first in the chat, and you got lazy. Ruben.
Oh man, yeah, you can't rest on your laurels. Solendal Fantima is in the chat. Thank you for coming by. And yeah, No Good says, what are we all drinking this evening? We will get to that in a moment. I don't want to spoil alert that. Kachung, who jumped in at the end of Rod's show and still going strong East Coast time. He says they were burning the candle at both ends tonight.
That is true.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, let's talk about what I'm doing the usual Jamesons right now. I pre-gamed with some of that Eagle Rare, which is a really nice.
All that's a nice. You typically don't pre-game with the good stuff, so that's nice.
Well, I will enjoy it more if I have it at the beginning.
You're right. You are right.
So I try to have the good stuff for like just a little bit.
Makes sense.
Just a little something to get a taste and then move on.
Because then you get the Jameson, then you get the Jim Beam. You're like, whatever. So I've got the backup as usual.
There you go.
Bourbon. So I am taking a Flanders Red. It's a wild sour tonight. So it just is going to be one of those really sour tart beers that you're gonna feel it like right there. You know where you get that sour right there in that jawline. You're like, so if you see me go, that's what it's for. I'm rocking the sour beers. I love sour beers, so I felt like that's what I had to bring tonight. So yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds delicious. I am off beer still. I mean, I do a beer every, month, maybe one beer a month.
But see, beer, if I hop on the streams, that's what I've always said. Like, beers keep me under control. Like, I'm like, oh, I have to be sipping on something. And if I'll have like 6 of these in our stream of our movie show. But if I can like pace myself to 1 or 2 beers.
Right. Well, No Good is with you. He's having an IPA, a Flying Dog Imperial IPA.
Nice.
Rob Boswell says, booyah. Hello to you, sir. So welcome to the show tonight. We're still talking about crime movies. And specifically tonight, we're talking about one of my favorite genres of crime, which is the heist film. We're going to get into some great heist films. We're also going to talk a little bit about drug related crime movies. And then we're going to finish with our usual patented, is it a crime? Is it a category? Well, we're going to look at some movies that we're having to question, is it a crime? Right? Something that I would consider to be maybe a more white collar crime, but we'll discuss that when we get in there in details.
And I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. So we got a lot of movies. We're not going to waste a bunch of your time. We're going to jump right into this slideshow created by my man, because I don't have the time and he is amazing at it. So there you go.
Hey, I say if I'm going to be watching these movies, it does me no problem to just hop on Canva and create a couple slides real quick. So it works.
So here we go. I love the bank vault we got here with the safe deposit boxes. Oh, hopefully that wasn't anything liquid.
Nope, it wasn't liquid. It was just it was an empty can on the table. We're all good.
So I love this vault. It looks cool.
Yes.
I love the look of it.
It took that. This was the longest part of the whole making the slide, was trying to find the right thing. And I was like, do I have burning money? Do I have like a pile of like a line of Coke with a gun pointing there? And I'm like, that might be a little aggressive for YouTube. So
it's nice. You just simple but clear.
Right.
So yeah, let's jump into some great heist movies. And this was the 3-hour movie that I rewatched. I actually purchased on Amazon the HD version. So it's now I bought it. I can watch it whenever I want streaming wise, because I knew it's a movie I've watched a ton. I actually have the soundtrack to this movie. I love the music to this movie, and Pacino and De Niro. If we were going to sort of put a face on crime cinema, it's got to be those guys, right?
Right. Well, this is not even to jump ahead, but like, this is the most iconic movie that I think you can think of when you think of those guys, because you think of anything crime related. We're talking organized crime. We're talking drug crime. You don't bring up a movie and don't mention Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And so when you finally can kind of get them,
on screen together, actually sharing dialogue.
I know everyone was so hyped for that interaction in the cafe that first time, where it was just like, because they know what you want going into this. They know, Michael Mann knew going into this that everyone wanted to see the dialogue interaction between Pacino and De Niro, and they make you wait a while too. I'm
a big Michael Mann fan, and in fact, he's going to come up here on this list tonight more than once. I'm a big fan of his visual style.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about him when we talked about Silence of the Lambs, because he made the original Manhunter film. And I love the look of his films. This film has he photographs LA in a really unusual and kind of awesome way, because he did it again in Collateral with Tom Cruise.
Right.
I love the look of LA in his movies. And yeah, the cast in this is so incredible. But for me, the star of this movie is the ambiance and the look of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's the beautifulness of how he shot the movie. You get that feel of like that. It almost, which is, and I feel like he's smart enough to do something like this. it feels like as a cop trying to investigate like criminals, like you have those like long lens like cameras, like a lot of the shots are close up that feel like you're kind of spying on the criminals at the time, and you get a lot of the kind of the close up shots, which then the beauty of LA, you get the glowing lights more, where it's kind of that just faded background of it more, where it doesn't just it just he shoots. I love how he shoots this movie.
Yeah.
The realism of it, but then also just kind of like the, because, whether it's a train station, whether it's, the way he shoots movies. So LA, those locations, like Miami Vice, when he does the Miami, like, say what you will about the movies, man, that guy can shoot a movie.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So for those that don't know this movie, it's a 3-hour cop versus criminal epic where you get a huge amount of time with the two teams, the police team that is hunting down, trying to catch these robbers, and this heist squad that De Niro is leading with, John Voight as the info guy, Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore. It's a squad of people on both teams that are really just trying to outthink one another, outplay one another. And that it's going to culminate in something amazing. And it was so incredible. The finale is so intense that it became bigger than the movie in a lot of ways. Because soon after, there was a crime in LA that mirrored the crime in the movie, with criminals in flak jackets with machine guns trying to rob a bank in the city. And it is an intense sequence that sort of is I don't want to say it's the climax, because there's a ton of movie after it, but it is certainly the high water mark in the movie for action.
Yeah, that scene, like, it almost is like a disservice, but if you don't have time to watch 3 hours, you watch that scene where they are going through the streets, that 35-minute scene, kind of like past halfway. It's so beautifully done. And I think that's where I think this movie, which is weird because he's a side character, really allows Val Kilmer to shine. Because
he shines doing so little.
Right. And that's what I think.
Dialogue. I think he's only got like 2 big dialogue scenes. The rest of the time, he's a man of action.
Right.
He's interesting that way.
And I think it's just beautiful, because this was right in the prime of Val Kilmer's, say what you will about, but I mean, it was in between Tombstone and The Saint, and it was before Batman Forever, so this was really still when Val Kilmer was crushing it, I think. And
absolutely,
you saw a side of him, like you said, he didn't have to do much dialogue, he didn't have to lead, but you saw how you can act without having much to say, and I thought he did a great job.
Now, I will say, for anyone who has issue with Al Pacino overacting, he has some scenes. He has some scenes that are just right there on the line, or just a good couple of yards past the line.
Right.
But if you can just enjoy the movie for what it is, I feel like the better way to say what I think Greg was trying to say is that 30-minute epic bank robbery scene is the payoff for the whole 3-hour movie. That is like, wow, I don't know if I'm ready for a 3-hour movie. There is a huge payoff, and that is it. And then it's an acting tour de force from all these great character actors. Natalie Portman with a great role. I had totally forgotten how good she was in this.
Right.
She had so many roles as a child actor, and this is just right up there with Leon and so many other great films that she had done. So yeah, just a lot of great acting, beautifully photographed, and just a whole lot of awesome.
Right.
Let's see what Kachug is saying. On top of his heads, his favorite heist movies are Heat, Suspects, The Town, Point Break, Italian Job. Honorable mention is failed heist of the Holy Grail. I love that list. That was great stuff. And we debated bank robberies versus heist movies. And I think in the end we came down on, they are heist movies, but which ones are worthy of being on the list? It was tricky.
Yeah, and I feel like it's going to be the same way with drug movies, but I feel like this one, there's going to be some that we didn't really even, because we're trying to pare it down a little bit. And there are some that I feel like, I'm like, I could have put that in there, or I could have done this if we had the space or time.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you could break down the heist genre into a lot of different subcategories, and I joked about Raiders of the Lost Ark and Time Bandits and so many others that are technically heist movies.
There it is.
Endgame, right? But for me, it came down to a movie that had a team working together that were trying to steal something, and sort of the drama and twists and turns of that effort. The betrayals and all the backstabbing and things.
Oh yeah. And I think they're definitely, when we do our bring guests on the following week, there's going to be some people where they go, how did you guys not talk about that? And I'm excited to have those conversations.
Yeah. We're going to have 2 guests next week. Carlito and I Got Issues are going to join us. Yeah, Ruben, I love The Professional. I don't think it fit into any of our categories for this particular round of crime, but maybe we'll get into, I don't know, Assassins or something another time. So let's roll into our second movie on the list here. And yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, and I know TJ said it's got to be the original Ocean's 11, and I just have to firmly disagree, because I found that movie when I ended up watching it, and I found that movie just dreadfully boring. Versus this movie has me laughing constantly. It has a ton of gorgeous people in gorgeous clothes looking great and being fantastic. Like, there's no loser in this.
Yeah, and there's no loser in this when they try to make Matt Damon out to be the loser. like, come on.
Yeah, Damon is the one you don't want.
Right. Well, the thing is, and man, I apologize that my chair is squeaky tonight, gang. So just hang in there. So I gotta, figure that out. This is so iconic. What I love about this movie is, say what you will to about 12 and 13, but you could literally give me George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Elliot Gould, Bernie Mac, all those guys who are in there, Don Cheadle, Damon. That's how I'm not even putting Don Cheadle on here.
Yeah, Don, like, who would forget Don Cheadle? But like on this list, he's like the 10th guy down.
But like, just give me a scene of them just in a room talking about planning the heist, and I could watch that for 4 hours.
Absolutely.
Because the chemistry that they have, the chemistry between Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Matt Damon, those three especially, is just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great talk in the chat here. Hello, Captain Comics. And I saw you, TJ. Yes, don't worry. I will always talk about you, even if you're not here. So don't worry. And a lot of people talking about The Town, which is a really great film. If people haven't seen it, that's a really good one. Biggie Shack is here. Hello, brother. But for me, what makes this movie work is, that squad, that team, whether you're sitting there watching Brad Pitt constantly shoveling food in his face, you're watching Scott Conn and Ben Affleck's brother Casey going back and forth and messing with each other. Like, I could watch the chemistry again and again and again.
Well, and then you even have that scene where they're in the van with Casey and Scott Conn, and Matt Damon's just like, I can't handle you two arguing, and like he leaves and throws stuff off because of that, because they're so annoying to him, but it's so endearing and entertaining for us as an audience. So
absolutely. And the spectrum of talent from, the aged Carl Reiner all the way down to Matt Damon. I think they really just had quite a packed house.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And it was, Bernie Mac, and you don't even talk about like Andy Garcia's character or Julia Roberts. Like, are you kidding me? They were fantastic in it. Anytime you have Julia Roberts.
And great twists. I do feel like it is, for modern heist movies, it's anything post Heat, this is kind of the high watermark for me.
Well, and I think what makes it so endearing is, like, we've talked about the chemistry between the people, but then the way they do it, it doesn't feel like a rope-a-dope to you as a viewer.
No.
Where I felt like that was the biggest knock with Ocean's 12. Ocean's 12, they kind of were just like, there's no way you can ever guess what's happening, because we're going to just completely tell you that everything we told you was a lie.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Where this one, you at least go, Oh,
I could see what they were doing all along if I really
right.
looked at it.
And I appreciated that. And I think that was the frustration that so many people had with Ocean's 12 that they tried to fix with Ocean's 13.
Which still didn't work. I mean, honestly, just this is the only one I want to watch ever again.
Right.
I'm a big Soderbergh fan too. I've mentioned him a few times, and yeah,
And we'll mention him a few times, or at least probably another time tonight. So
yeah. So Usual Suspects came up in the chat, and I know that this movie gets some has some black eyes because of Bryan Singer and Kevin Spacey, and it deserves those. But it is an immaculately made movie that has, we mentioned mood, photography, acting, editing, music. I think this movie hits a home run on every single level. I rewatched it again a week ago, and it holds up, man. This movie is just fire. And the acting for me, I mean, I love Gabriel Byrne. I mentioned him last week when talking about gangster movies.
Miller's Crossing, right?
Right. And for me, the steal of this movie is Benicio del Toro, who you can't under freaking stand for the whole movie. The guy's fucking amazing. My brothers and I do that thing all the time. He'll flip you. He'll flip you for real.
Well,
Like,
what's so funny was I was watching someone talk about this, that they had done an interview with him, and he goes, Benicio del Toro was like, I knew my character was basically there to die, and so I wanted to create a little something that people would remember my character for more so, and it works brilliantly from that aspect. You're like, wow, that's smart,
right? And I heard something similar where I don't know if it was the writer or Benicio saying like they had come to the understanding that like he doesn't really say anything in the movie that another character doesn't say already. Like he doesn't add anything to the plot. So his dialogue is never important.
Right.
So why not make it indistinguishable? Like why not make it hard to understand him? And I think it's hilarious. Like that first moment when you see him putting on the lip balm and he's just like, you know, you got the conga music playing in the background. His nationality is a complete mystery in this movie.
Right. Like, you have no idea.
Like you don't know. Who cares? He is just that character, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
and this is one of those. I mean, this is still in one of my top 10 favorite movies. Like I love this movie. It still holds water to it. I still remember watching it. Where watching this movie, I said, "Wow, that's amazing!" Like I thought the twist, everything was great, and I was like blown away from that. And so for me, like it pains me that there is the black eyes of, you know, the director and the actor of it, because, I mean, Kevin Spacey does a phenomenal job as Verbal Kint in this. Like as this. He kind of plays a guy with cerebral palsy, kind of like, and it's like just his dialogue, this the way he does it. He deserves the award that he got for it, whether you like the guy or not, you know, and not celebrating anything of him as a, you know, outside of movies, but like he deserves this award for what he did as an actor on this. For
absolutely. I don't want to take anything away from whatever he's accused of, or right. And, you know, whatever in the end, but like he is the linchpin for this film, and his performance. And I've heard, you know, the big knock I hear against this movie is that people feel like, well, it basically means that the whole movie is a complete fabrication, and it's not. It's actually just it's got tenuous connection of fact, right. And what you're dealing with is he has to spin a yarn that the cops will buy.
Right.
Using the evidence he knows that they have, and give them just enough breadcrumbs to string it all together without giving them anything useful to go on long term.
Because the greatest trick that never ever pulled.
Now, do you think if the whole movie is about trying to get rid of all the people who know who Kaiser Soze looks like, if that's the whole point, does he blow it by basically letting all the cops know what he looks like at the end?
Well, yes and no, because
it irked me, but I found a way around it, and I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, yes and no, but they already knew no matter what he did anyways, the way they presented it, because they got the facts. So the fax was coming in whether he spun that web or not. And if he's in the interrogation with Chaz, his character in that room, he gets away no matter what because it's going to show up in that way. So that's where I'm kind of like, yeah, he was trying to get rid of everyone who saw him to keep this kind of mystique of Kaiser Soze. But by letting the one guy in the hospital who from the boat dock or whatever who got they were able to sketch, he already slipped from that aspect.
For me, the big thing was like all the people who are left alive knowing what he looks like at the end have no evidence that he is actually that guy.
Right.
Because the burn victim dies,
right.
And that was all supposition, right? The cop thinks he's got an idea of what's going on, that maybe he was lied to, but he has no proof, no evidence. So it's all hypothetical conjecture about a ghost story at the end versus the guys he does whack have the facts. And they need to be wiped out. So I that's the only way I can rationalize it in the end.
I get it.
All right, so there we go. Great, another great, and there are many heists in this movie, several sort of thefts and robberies and teamwork sequences. All right, so now I'm going to toggle a little bit here, folks, but I know TJ is right now very happy that we have a movie from 1969 featuring the amazing Michael Caine. But here's the reality, TJ. We're not going to do one or the other. We're going to be talking about all the Italian jobs, my man. But you go ahead. You go first. I finally saw this movie for the first time in the last week.
Yeah, because I kind of forced your hand. So this is on Amazon Prime, and I rewatched it again. This was one of the first ones I was exposed to when I watched The Italian Job. I watched it with my parents making me. Michael Caine is so engaging for me as an actor in this. I think most of us, when we get exposed to Michael Caine, it's from Alfred in The Dark Knight, right? It's from all the movies where he's a lot older than he was in 1969. And I think to see the kind of the swagger, the presence that he had as an actor, as someone in 1969. Because if you're trying to tell someone now that he's like, oh, he's supposed to play this like sexy, iconic character like Mark Wahlberg does in the new one, people go, Michael Caine? Like, wasn't he in Secondhand Lions? Like, what is like, and like, he's old. But I think like his presence, like it shows you just the type of like character that he was able. And they definitely in this movie go on to the kind of like the sex symbol of who Michael Caine is more than they do in the remake with Mark Wahlberg, which is funny to me too. I know I was talking with you off screen. I was like, my biggest knock on this is I feel like Benny Hill is so underutilized in this movie.
That's a really astute observation.
He's such a great comedic actor and like just and I feel like he's so underutilized in this movie, and that's my biggest pain with this movie. I'm like, you guys have freaking Benny Hill in this movie and he's not being utilized in the way he should be. So but I'm curious to see what you think, because
I will legitimately say that I came to some thoughts about movies that don't age well. And I had this problem with The Longest Yard, and I think that there are several factors. One is how old you are when you see the movie,
right,
versus when it came out, right? If I saw this in the theater and I was a lot younger, it probably meant more to me. Seeing it at 43 for the first time on a TV screen, it doesn't hit me the same way. Now, Michael Caine is a phenomenal CAD. Like he's just always been, and he's played the CAD in many movies. And that was his early day kind of shtick, he did, whether it was Alfie or whether it was Sleuth or whatever the movie was, he just plays the CAD beautifully. And he bangs 9 women and robs the bank and gets away with it. And everybody, the guys all wanted to be him and the women all wanted to be with him. And it was all this thing. So I could see where it was, something that would appeal to audiences. But like the original Thomas Crown Affair versus the remake, I had no emotional connection to the original, and I find the remakes superior. So for me, like I think this film also suffers from the lack of an Edward Norton. Like no villain at the centerpiece kind of weakens the movie, and it becomes almost like it's basically a comedy at this point.
It is. It's a British comedy. Is how it comes off of, which I think and so that's one of those things I think too when you're talking about movies and remakes, and I think this would be a fun show to do sometime of almost do like a original remake show. Like, is it better? Italian Job. We've had Italian Job. We've had now Psycho. We've had remakes and originals, and I think we could do a whole show on that. But I think there is something to be said with if I watched the original, or I watched the remake before I watched the original. I went backwards to go and see that. And I think there is something to be said because you have expectations. Whether they're right or wrong, you have expectations when you go, okay, this is what I imagined the Italian Job to be because this is what I saw. I think that's the same type of thing that you get when you read a book to a degree, like before a movie. Most of us that read like, oh, the book's better than the movie. We read it first. And I think we have expectations of who the character should be. We have these expectations in our head of what we envision them to act like and do things and stuff like this. And I think when you have those expectations, whether you like, oh, I'm going to go in this with nothing, I think there is that going to be that. And it's hard. It's really hard to take a movie from 1969. So we'll go back to what's the other one was what, 2001?
Yes, 2001.
So to have
2003.
So I mean, what, almost 40 years or 35 years of difference in there. You have so much more of cinematography and the car chases and stuff that makes a good movie, a good heist movie. So it is really hard to compare. So with that being said, I love the 2003 remake as well. So I know
and they're very different films. I mean, this is an action film. The other one's a comedy.
It is.
But at the same time, I feel like this one is an action film that pulls off the comedy nicely. I think Italian Job pulled off the comedy well, but at the same time had some sequences that were really dark and really kind of like intense. And then other scenes that were trying to be funny and didn't really play it very well. So it was a little more uneven, in my opinion.
Right.
But this is more popcorn.
Yeah,
in my opinion, this is more of a summer blockbuster kind of a movie anyways. I mean, every actor in this is perfect for their part. Mos Def is great. Statham is perfect. Seth Green is great. I got the spirit. I mean, there's so many little great moments. And again, I think Edward Norton, makes this a better film because I think I want to see who they're robbing in the original film. And really it's this abstract, oh, we're stealing from the Italians because they got some deal with the Chinese and we're trying to help Britain. And it's all about yay, Britain, but it's abstract because I don't know where this money's going to go and how it's actually going to help the economy.
Yeah, you don't get that. You get the villains on the side of the mountain, kind of like for a couple of different scenes.
Yeah.
I will say that is better where a good movie gives you someone to root against. And I do feel like the original Italian Job, it's so deep and complex of like who the true villain is in that movie. And so it's hard to because that's what makes a good heist movie is when you're pulling, because they're stealing. So you're pulling for the bad guys, even if they aren't bad guys or they really are bad guys.
Right.
And so when you don't have that, it's harder to do.
I do agree. Newer films are more flash just because you tend to get a glitzier product in general with better photography and effects each time you make a movie. But I also feel like the actors are used a little better here. You talked about how poorly they used Benny Hill. And even Mos Def gets great little moments of, I had a bad experience. Like that's a line my brothers and I quote to each other constantly because of his delivery on that, So yeah, I really enjoy the performances in this one.
Yeah. And, I feel like that's why we're talking. I was like, I was like,
Well,
oh,
and that was the joke, right? You had said the Italian Job, and I said, yeah, I totally agree. And then it was like 5 days later, you're like, I meant the original, right? And I was like,
and you're like, whoa,
I was like,
I haven't even seen that.
I was like, no, I did not know that, and I did not assume that, and I did not mean that. So
I feel like that was funny because it usually is the other way around.
Right. Well, and yeah, usually I'm the one that likes the older version, right?
Right.
But when it comes to heist movies, I will say I'm routinely on the other end of the coin because I feel like with Thomas Crown Affair is another example where I think the original Thomas Crown Affair is straight trash. Like I do not enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
And The Getaway is another one where you have, a lot of time passing, and I kind of like the new one with Alec Baldwin better. I'm just gonna say it.
So what we'll have to do is you mentioned Alfie. We'll have to rewatch Alfie and see if Michael Caine did better than Jude Law because I feel like the Jude Law movie got raked over the coals a lot. So
I didn't even see the newer one, so I have no knowledge on that one. Missed opportunity to cast Michael Caine instead of Donald Sutherland. I agree, but I don't know that he would have done it. Who knows if he would have been like, I want to go back to that. I don't know.
Right.
All right, let's continue on to my sentimental pick. This movie might be my favorite movie that we'd mention all night tonight.
All right, we're going to be here for 30 minutes, guys. Clock it.
I could legitimately talk all night about this movie and how much I love it. And it's connected to Time Bandits in a phenomenal way because it's that same sort of trope. I'm talking about A Fish Called Wanda, and I freaking love this movie. Michael Palin, John Cleese, of course you have that great Monty Python backbone to this film. But then when you throw in, the gorgeous Jamie Lee Curtis looking just smoking hot all through this movie, and then Kevin Kline in an Academy Award worthy and winning performance, this movie is just it's like you can't take your eyes off of the twists and turns. Everybody's backstabbing everybody. It's hilarious. Like I laugh to this day watching this whole movie. I'll watch and just laugh all the way through it. I think it's just it's top to bottom perfection and probably my favorite heist movie, period.
So this is the first one tonight that I have not seen, and it is on HBO Max, and I'm going to watch it now because I know your love for it and I can appreciate it. And I mean, Kevin Kline, the fact that he got the best supporting actor in this one, Kevin Kline is dynamite as an actor. He's in so many good movies that I appreciate and love him. And so if this is what got him an Academy Award, I can't wait to watch this. So I'm very excited. I'm also very excited that our boy Gore is now in the chat because I would love to have seen what he said about us picking Italian Jobs.
Yeah, because I picked the new Italian Job and Greg picked the old Italian Job. So when I've sort of noticed that when it comes to heist movies, I kind of like the remakes more than the originals, but that might just be perspective. Who knows? Yeah. So A Fish Called Wanda. Couldn't get enough of it. It's a very good. Yeah, I mean, it's basically a sex comedy. I mean, there's just everybody wants to bone Jamie Lee Curtis. Think of her like a few years. This is pre True Lies, so pre striptease. She didn't really seem like the MILF yet. She just was like the hottie. She is amazing in this, and there's just so many great plot twists. Michael Palin as this bank robber thief with a stutter who can't speak a sentence. He is so spot on. And Kevin Kline is just foul. I mean, he is the bad guy you just root against, and he's just hilarious in this movie. Absolutely amazing.
Well, yeah. Yes.
There you go.
In your face, John. In your face. Anytime Gore agrees with me over John, I'm happy. So, because I don't get that, because it's usually John. You're usually the ones like, oh, this, and I'm like,
it's all right.
I haven't watched Time Bandits yet, but let me watch this. And
I have a ton of hot takes. I'm used to it, but this movie is not a hot. Liking A Fish Called Wanda is just not a hot take. And I want to say John Cleese wrote the screenplay or was part of the screenwriting for this movie.
I want to say you're correct because I remember seeing something about it when I was putting the slides together that he was a co-writer on the script. So,
okay, I'm not. Yeah, he wrote the script and he and the director did the story.
Yep.
So yeah, I work because I went to a screening of Holy Grail, and he spoke afterwards, and the movie came up as far as writing it and trying to get the cast together. And I will say they got the whole cast, and John Cleese wrote his follow up, and it was all a totally different story, all new characters, but it was like a troupe of actors. They brought in Cleese again, and Palin again, and Curtis again, and that movie is a fucking disaster. Like, don't watch that.
Which one's that?
I don't even remember the name. If someone in the chat does, I might be able to look it up while I'm here on the thing for him. But
yeah,
it is just garbage. Like, it backs up my feeling that comedy is like magic in a bottle when you capture it, and you can't recreate it just because you get all the same people together again. Right? It never works.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you don't get. It's so hard pressed to get a comedy sequel that hits the same.
Right. It's called Fierce Creatures.
Yep.
Different director. Cleese wrote it with another guy, but it has Curtis, Kevin Kline, John Cleese, Michael Palin. So all of their big four came back again.
And it's a train wreck, so that's good to know.
It absolutely is a shit show.
Nice.
So let's get to your sentimental pick.
I adore this movie. If you haven't seen Baby Driver, do it. Edgar, I'm also a huge fan of Edgar Wright. The Coronado trilogy that he did, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, End of the World, great. Scott Pilgrim. He hasn't done a bad movie and I have a special, I was really excited. I got special premiere passes to see this a month before it went to theaters. This is one of those movies, and I can't even say Ansel is the main character's name, the main actor. I can't even pronounce his name, but I think I remember casting I'm like, who is this kid? He's from Fault in Our Stars. That was his big claim to fame. And he's with people like Kevin Spacey, Jamie Foxx, John Hamm, John Bernthal. Who is this kid trying to hang with these? And this is just, it's entertaining. The scenes where it's all about I feel like we don't ever talk about for people who watch movies what it's about.
We never do.
We just assume you guys know, or you just want to hear opinions. I haven't seen Fish Called Wanda. I know it's going to be great. I know nothing about what it's about other than it's some type of heist movie still. But I feel like Baby Driver, it's this kind of concept of it's all about getaway. So car chases, they're shot very well done. The usage of music in this is beautiful, and the opening the opening scene is great with the getaway car chase from the bank heist. But then when they get to the title package, and the music's playing in the background, and he's walking to go get coffee for all the bank robbers, and there's just the graffiti on the wall. It's just so to me, I think it's just great directing. I love I know I read an article where Edgar Wright and James Gunn, they were both, I think James Gunn was putting out Guardians of the Galaxy 2 at the same time here, that they were actually texting each other and hey, I'm going to use this song in my soundtrack. Is this because Edgar Wright knew how important the soundtrack was for Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, that they kind of were going alongside each other together of hey, how is this? And if you just want to listen to a good soundtrack, this movie is top notch in my opinion. So
yeah, I mean, I think discussing the comparisons between Guardians and this, and I know that Edgar Wright was trying to get his Ant-Man made, and that didn't work out, and I think he had made a close relationship with James Gunn as a result. Right. And there's definitely that similarity in how music functions in a story. I think you're right. This movie centers around cars and music. That's the whole magic of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I really do enjoy it. It's a whole lot of fun. For me, it's lesser than pretty much all the other ones we've mentioned for just a myriad of little reasons.
Right.
But definitely great. I'm sorry, Gore. The truth is, I'm not a Steve McQueen fan. I'm just not. So when it comes to, The Getaway and Thomas Crown, and I feel like I have to be in the right mood and catch the right movie for me to enjoy a good, like even the Magnificent Seven. Like I'd rather watch the Seven Samurai. Like I don't like it as much, and so yeah, I'm sorry, man. Yeah, something about that time frame. So
and I think I obviously this is why it's a sentimental pick for me, right? Like if I'm comparing it to a heist movie to Heat or to some of these other ones that we've compared it to, it's tough. But what I like is it's so unique in the beautifully. I'll tell you, you're going to be hard pressed to find a more beautifully shot car chase scenes than this movie, and you're also going to be more hard pressed to find a movie. I think it's just so unique, the music, how it integrates into the movie, that's attractive to me as it's something different. And I also feel like this is a movie that a lot of people might have slept on and not seen, which because I think it was fine on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was like a 7 or an 8, but I still feel it didn't get the love that I think it should have deserved. So I wanted to kind of bring it to the chat for my sentimental, which I think we do a little bit more. Like Fish Called Wanda, I'm a big movie buff, and I still haven't seen it
on their heist list, but me. Like nobody would have picked it.
And so that's why I think we kind of bring some of these sentimentals a little bit of like, you probably haven't seen it, but ooh.
Yeah. I would argue that it is for sure. A very different style one for sure. But for me, again, I think all these other ones just beat it out. And I'm glad to surprise you, Gore. Sorry about that. How have I never heard of this movie? Yeah, Baby Driver was a great little indie hit a couple of years back, and great.
And that's why I think we, like I said, we picked these sentimental picks. Glitter and Duct Tape. Watch Baby Driver. It's on cable streaming services, but let me know. I'm curious to see what you think, because I really like it when I recommend movies and people go, "Oh, I didn't like it," or "I didn't," because I've definitely recommended a lot of movies in this show to John that he goes, I'm not going to listen to your recommendations.
I don't remember that, but okay.
No, you didn't say that, but I feel like you've watched Green Street Hooligans. You watched the original Italian Job. I feel like I'm over 2 on like, oh, you should watch this. You're like, so we'll have to see how you.
I don't know that I hate either one. I think I was certainly entertained by both, but they would not have cracked the list.
Right. So we'll have to see with my sentimental drug pick if that would do it for you or not, because I don't think you've seen it, but.
Well, then let's get into some movies with drugs. Now, like, I went round and round on this as far as like Lethal Weapon is a drug crime movie, but it's not really the focus. I feel like it's a buddy cop movie first, and it's a drug movie second. So I went back and forth between like, what is it about for drug crime movies that I'm really looking for? And for me, it was more when the focus was on the world of drugs and less on the cop.
Yeah.
And I think in general, across crime movies, I think the crime movies that I think I've enjoyed the most are the ones when the cop has a lesser part to play, because we're really looking at the criminal point of view.
Right.
Because you could do cop movies all day long, and there's.
Well, and I feel like drugs are integrated into every crime movie to some degree. Like you probably could make a case for 85% of crime movies to be drug related. And I was with you on all when I was picking all my movies with you. Of like I wanted it more focused, except for my sentimental pick. It's a little bit more not on that
avant-garde.
Right. So, but we'll get to that later.
Well, you could argue that Donnie Brasco or The Godfather, these films that have to do with organized crime, focus on illegal drugs and bringing drugs in. Even the Prohibition era, you could argue alcohol was the drug, right, that you were bringing in, and Capone was making his money off the bootlegging.
And I think we were focusing more on drug crime.
Right.
More than drugs. Because like we're not going to be talking about 21 grams here as much, which holy buckets, it's a trippy movie, but it's more drug themed of like the effects of drugs and stuff more than of the effects of dealing drugs or things like that. So
somebody in the chat calling for more De Niro. I do agree. Ronin is a very good heist movie, by the way. That's a very good heist movie. Best car chases, I think, still in movies come from Ronin. I know that
that's because he doesn't like Steve McQueen. He doesn't like Bullet and stuff like that. Gore.
Right. No. Yeah. That's exactly why.
Anytime I can throw you under the bus, I will.
Well, here's some more Al Pacino for you. I feel like you can't talk drug crime and not talk Scarface. And I will legitimately say, I think this is a highly overrated movie that's become this like kitschy, symbolic, like, oh, Scarface is the coolest movie ever, man. And I feel like those people haven't probably watched it recently because it's like 3 hours freaking long and it's really dull in some portions, but it is definitely the model of a drug crime movie, a guy rising to power with a big table with a mountain of cocaine on it. Like it has all the metaphors or all the symbology for a really great drug crime movie.
It's I made the joke last week of like, you couldn't have been in a college dorm and owned a Godfather poster. This is more so but I will say this, if someone came out, since we are comic people, and they made this as a comic cover, the negative space is all the rage right now. I got that Luke Skywalker negative space cover, and you got the banana yellow Wolverine cover. So this is ahead of its time. Whoever created this movie poster, comic creators were like, there's going to be a lot of spec if I do a comic cover like this.
Right. Absolutely. Again, great cast. Michelle Pfeiffer, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, Robert Loggia, really great Robert Loggia.
It's a 3-hour movie. So it definitely has its down points. It has its like, okay. It is one of those movies though that you do feel you invest in the character so much, because Al Pacino starts as kind of this, he's from Cuba, like he's coming to America. He really doesn't have anything. So he's kind of like, anything I get, in that earlier scenes in the movie where he's just like, with the, the apartment complex with the, the chainsaws in the bathroom. And it's like, whatever, kill me. If you want to kill me, like I'm already having a better life than I kind of was when I was where I was from. So this kind of like to see this kind of the growth of like coming from nothing to something. It resonates with a lot of us. We had talked about it, I think, a lot with Goodfellas. This kind of like where Ray Liotta's character was looking in and saying, I see their jewelries. I see the watches. I see the rings. This is what I want. The house that he eventually gets. You walk into the front.
The machine gun with the grenade launcher and the disco parties with the hot ladies and
the world is yours, spinning globe, and with the walk-in pool. Like it's just kind of this idealistic mindset that of coming from nothing, of what you can achieve. But it also has a nice balance of how much is too much. Like, because I feel like they're definitely, with this movie, out of most of these types of movies, there's a point where if you just would have said, cool, let's call it quits right here, I'm okay. Like, it felt like he could have been okay and gotten out and lived this kind of life that he wanted to live to a little degree. But then it was that, like, how much is too much? And that's then his relationship with his sister, his relationship with everything starts to tank, and it goes all sour. And
I think when you're making films that highlight a criminal life,
right,
it's hard to be you have to be aware of the glamorization that Gore Vidal mentions here. And
right.
I like to think that in general, movies don't glamorize it. I think that's a longer debate, and this film certainly comes really close, so much so that, again, a lot of kids want to have this is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like, oh, I want to live the life of, this is the life, I want, hold this up as, this is going to be my drug empire living on the streets. This is the guy you want to emulate. And it's like, I don't think that's what really happens, because if you watch the movie, it's a complete derail, and that's the reality of what the guy's going through. But yeah.
Well, I think the reality is it's very similar to how many kids go out onto their house and go in their backyard and relive, Michael Jordan's pull-up jumper breaking Byron Russell's ankles, the Utah Jazz, game 6 or whatever. People are like, I'm going to be an NBA star. How many high school athletes, and then it goes to collegiate athletes who are D1 to then actually get to be NBA stars? This is like, I know this probably is a flawed analogy, but like, how many of like low-level drug dealers who go, I'm doing this because I want to have this Scarface reality, that are gonna, you're never gonna get to that tier. Like Scarface is like the imaginary persona of like making it to the NBA,
right?
That like most people aren't gonna get to that stage, and I think there is that glorification of it that you're never gonna get to. So someone has to kind of knock some type of reality into it too.
Talking about people emulating him in the early 2000s, seeing it on DVD. I thought it was interesting what the comment Gore makes here about Michelle Pfeiffer's career, and how this was like something that kind of reinvigorated her career after Grease 2.
Right.
No shame on Grease 2, though.
There's a lot of shame on Grease 2.
That's probably a fair amount of shame.
I know you're all about hot takes, but there's a lot of shame.
I've actually never seen it.
I don't know if I can probably honestly say I've seen it completely, but I know enough to know.
There you go. All right, so then let's continue on here. This was, I have to say, I don't know if you saw this movie, but this was my big like push to get in the list here.
So I saw this when it came out. I saw it another point, but I knew it was your big push. It's on Prime Video. I watched it on Amazon Prime Tuesday, so it's fresh in my head. Talk away, my friend, because I'm ready to talk about Narc.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this in the theater when it first came out. I was a Carnahan junkie. I thought he was a really edgy, interesting director, and I knew that Tom Cruise was trying to get him to do a Mission Impossible movie. There were all these things going on around him, and because they couldn't get that movie off the ground, he was making this on the side. And this movie was filmed guerrilla style on the streets of Detroit. Like he had sequences where he had Jason Patrick with a fake police badge walking around asking questions of just random people on the street. And then later they would get that person to sign an agreement to be in the movie. Like he was just legitimately canvassing the neighborhoods of Detroit. I love the opening 10 minutes of this movie are some of the most brutal, grueling film moments I've seen. It's Clockwork Orange level challenge to watch, where you have this foot chase through projects, and this guy pumping leftover drugs into people he runs by, and then taking a kid hostage on a playground, and the hero cop trying to pull off shoot him at the last second, and the way the bullets spark and ricochet off of things. It is photographed brilliantly, edited brilliantly, and the sound work, where you're really just hearing Jason Patrick's footfalls and breathing, is really, really great. It's been almost 20 years. Yeah. And I really love the two lead performances, and the fact that this is not looking at hero cops. It's really looking at flawed individuals, and the way that, much like in The Wire, the way drugs have a habit of just sort of tearing away at anybody involved.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you talk about that opening 10 minutes, the way Joe shot that he shoots it like you are drugged out yourself watching it, like kind of the shaky camera, the distorted vision and things like that. And I think what you are correct, and what makes this work is it isn't about dirty cops. It's not about even drugs as much, but it's about two characters who are both flawed and are trying to figure out what that means in the midst of working as cops in the, in the drug scene. And Jason Patric's character does and so does Ray Liotta, does great. But kind of it's not a black and white movie, right? It's not like you walk away going, oh yes, this is how it should have ended. This is perfect. This is great. It walks through this. It's a flawed ending and it's a flawed movie because they're flawed people. And I think that's what's a brilliant take on it for me, which is why I did really appreciate it. And I was glad I revisited it again.
And I love that Ray Liotta, he seems like he's the bad guy all the way through. But the reality is, much like on The Wire, there aren't any good or bad people. Like this movie really wants you to realize that there are just a lot of people trying to do their best amidst a whole lot of crap. And I love the tragedy and sort of beauty of what Ray Liotta's character is trying to accomplish.
And I think that's what makes it work, because I think if it goes the one way or the other, that Jason Patric's character is 100% the good guy and Ray Liotta is 100% the bad guy, that you go, okay, it's your typical undercover drug cop movie. Like, okay, fine, it's fine.
It's a bad Training Day ripoff is what it'd be.
Right. Because Training Day was also 2001, right? So it was
somewhere in that range, yeah.
It was right there. So I think it's, because it doesn't do what Training Day does well, like from that aspect, and it's not trying to be that.
Right.
And I think that's what works. It's trying to. I think the beautifulness of taking a movie, like you said, where there's something about, and I'm trying to think what movie we talked. Maybe it was Donnie Darko. We talked about like there's no good and there's no bad. Like the decisions he made, some good stuff could have happened, some bad stuff could have happened. And that kind of leaving you in the gray to kind of figure out of what's good and what's bad, I think is really powerful if you can do it well as a director, because for an audience, it makes you think and go, well, wait a second, this is not what I expected.
Absolutely. And I love the intimacy that the film also creates. I think the reveal that when you see Jason Patric taking a shower and he's got a little baby at home it's almost as big a gut punch as everything that's gone before it.
Right.
You imagine him as this, like, he's played drug-addled, abusing cops in other movies, like that one with Jennifer Jason Leigh that's now blanking me in my mind, but like he's played those cops, and to see him have a baby and be doing this intimate shower moment, and he has several of those kind of moments with his child through the film, I think it just adds this layer of intimacy where you are right there with these guys when they're making horrible choices or good choices or figuring something out or trying to protect something or whatever.
The only choice that he made that was flawed for me, which really bothered me, was when he's laying in bed with his wife after she's trying to not talk to him and she's holding the baby. She then literally like turns her back away from the baby, who very easily could roll off the bed, and they're just looking at each other. I'm like, you put the baby in between yourself. Every parent knows that. As someone who has a 1.5-year-old at home, I'm watching, I'm like, you guys don't have kids, because you would have said, hold on, wait a second, let's place the child in here, because this is not safe to have the child on the out. It's like, who walks on the outside closest to the road, right? When you're walking on a date, like, come on, you put the child in between, you protect the child. That's
a funny moment. It's funny that moment stuck with you so much.
It's a new thing as a parent.
Of Irreversible prepared me for Narc. Shot also with a handheld camera. The first 20 or so minutes of Irreversible are a nightmare, and it's only the beginning. Wow, I'll have to check. I don't know that I've seen that.
I know. I haven't. It's new to me.
Nice. All right, let's continue on our drug-addled feud here and get to the other Steven Soderbergh film on our list.
Told you guys he'd be back.
Which is his, big Oscar-winning film, Traffic. An absolutely powerful remake looking at the drug trade in the United States from pretty much every possible perspective. A huge cast, all doing just great work. And I've seen the original. I think it's a British mini series with like 4 or 5 episodes with a K, Traffic with a K. But I obviously have a greater connection to this because maybe it's just my Soderbergh fandom.
Yeah, this is what I think, like, and I love. I'm saying, like, I'm giving a backhanded compliment. This takes what like Crash wanted to do and does a better job at it of telling the integrated stories. And I still like Crash. Don't get me wrong, but I know I'm in the minority here on that. But to see how what this is different from us. For we get to see how the drugs affect different aspects of society. And I think you get to see a lot of character growth in some characters that you don't get to in some of the movies that we've talked about so far. Usually it's not for the better, most of the growth that we've seen in the characters when we're talking drug related, but you look at Michael Douglas's character, as a kind of hardened, come down on you fast kind of judge, and this with drugs thing, without spoilers, to understand that like it affects his family in a very personal way that he kind of has to go, I need to take a look at it a little bit more. And I think you see that growth, and it's great.
And this is another movie that I think has an impeccable performance from Benicio del Toro, one that was definitely worthy of his Oscar nomination, and just really captures another layer of his ability. The fact that they would make a Tijuana police officer the heart and soul of their film, it goes a long way to show what they wanted to say here, which is that maybe our preconceptions about what the war on drugs is might be inaccurate. I think the seeing the soccer mom as the Machiavellian villain, seeing the Tijuana detective as the heart, and seeing a politician as somebody who is fallible and willing to admit it for the sake of his family over his job. I think all of those things very powerful. And then I haven't even gotten to Luis Guzman and Don Cheadle as the 2 police officers on the street trying to like fix their little portion. And that story arc is a beautiful one in its own.
Right. Yeah, it's just cast fantastic. I think Steven Soderbergh knows how to bring a cast of great talent and utilize them to their fullest ability. I think you see that with this. You see that with Ocean's 11. So, excuse me.
Yeah, he's able to manage a large cast well and give everybody a little moment to shine. Even Dennis Quaid, he's just got this greaseball lawyer bit down, but he's only got a few scenes. They're just all so mesmerizing.
Right.
He's just such a creepy greaseball.
So good.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on to my sentimental pick in the drug category. Another Benicio del Toro movie. My God, we can't get away from this guy.
You love some Benicio del Toro.
I do, and I love some Denis Villeneuve. I think he is a phenomenal filmmaker, and I think this movie is just top to bottom awesome. I love the 3 leads. Obviously, they're all just really, really great. Right. I know that there's some issue with maybe the way law enforcement is portrayed here a little bit, but I think the realities of shades of gray are what this film does really well. And the intensity of the drama and the action sequences are just, man, this is a grab you by your throat powerhouse kind of a movie. I think it's shot as any Denis Villeneuve film is. It is shot beautifully. Like it is, the photography, even when it's dirty and bloody and graphic, is still gorgeous. I'm just a huge fanboy of his filmmaking ability, and this movie, it's right up there with all of those.
Yeah, this is one that I don't remember watching. I feel like I've seen it, but.
Well, they've made a sequel, and it's already come out, and you probably didn't see that, but you saw the trailers, and it's all like now one movie that's mixed together.
Gotcha.
And I heard that sequel was not very good. because honestly, the whole thing is right here. I don't know that you needed another comment on that. I did see Che, and it's a very good movie. But yeah, I would prefer. I think I don't know that I could pick between Sicario and Traffic. I think they're both really, really great. I think Traffic is looking at a much bigger picture, and Sicario is looking at a very intimate moment. You know, I think it's much more microscopic, and in that way, they don't feel comparable as easily. Did you have anything to say on this one? You don't remember what you were saying?
I don't remember enough so I'm letting you rock.
The basic plot has to do with a house explosion in Arizona where they find bodies in the walls of the house. Like basically drug dealers were using it as a place to stash their victims when they had just territory disputes. An FBI agent is brought in, and she is forced to work with this kind of renegade CIA agent played by James Brolin, who basically has been given carte blanche to kind of take the war on drugs to another level. And he's got this guy working for him, played by Benicio del Toro, who has no official designation at all.
Okay.
And they are basically pulling off little operations in Mexico and then sneaking criminals back to the U.S. for to be judged for their crimes, crime lords and things like that. And you don't quite understand Benicio del Toro's role in all of this until the film really gets rolling.
Okay.
So that's basically the synopsis.
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen it then.
It's a great movie and another great Del Toro performance, obviously. And I love Emily Blunt, obviously great. And she's
fantastic.
She's basically the lead in this. She's the heart and soul of this movie. All right. Bearded's movie. I hear your movie is dope.
My movie is dope. So this is where I said, like, this strays away a little bit of where we've been going into the drug trafficking, crime movie. The premises of this movie, because I know this is going to be one a lot of people probably haven't gotten to see yet.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know. It's
the three characters who are right there. They're a group of high school students who are nerds that love 90s hip hop. And so they want to do like this punk hip hop band that they're in. And so it plays into the world of hip hop a lot, you know, like A$AP Rocky's in it. There's a bunch of rappers who are in it that are, that have connections into it. The idea, though, is of looking at, it's kind of one of those, they stumble upon, there's a mix-up, they have a book bag full of drugs that then they have to sell, kind of. And so they kind of stumble into this world that they're not known for, and they're trying to figure out. It basically, the best way I can describe it to me is if John Hughes was going to write a movie based in Inglewood. That's how it comes off to me, right? Like you have your characters who that he does such a good job of writing young characters. It's again another movie with great soundtrack that flows very well with the movie. The lead, Shemek Moore, I'm sure I'm butchering his name, is phenomenal. Just a great actor. This is one that I would highly recommend to people. Forrest Whitaker narrates throughout the movie. A$AP Rocky is a rapper. Rick Fox, basketball player. There's a bunch of other rappers. The kind of I think it's a good take on African American like nerd culture. Like you don't get to see that representation in movies a lot, and I think that's an interesting take from that aspect to see. What is, because they make the joke, the one character who's in the very back of the movie poster, he makes a joke at one point. He's like, we need to make an Uber app where we can avoid, where they let us know where the crime, the gangs are, so we can avoid them. Like we need an app that shows us what route as nerds to get around. And it just is an endearing movie of like, it's entertaining, it's funny, it's well written. It's an indie movie through and through. So I know it's on under a lot of people's radars. And so if you've never checked out Dope, I think you will not be disappointed in it.
Nice.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it when we can pull out movies that maybe people haven't seen or heard of.
Right.
Gore Vidal is doing it in the chat. He mentioned 000 is on Amazon Prime. It's a drug crime drama TV series from the POV of 3 different families in 3 different countries.
Oh, wow.
He also mentioned his first experience with Emily Blunt was a movie called My Summer of Love, a great film with a great soundtrack. So there you go. So this one, he says it's slumber party only, so we'll all have to wait for this to be on streaming here at some point.
Yeah, it was at some point, and that's when I first watched it. But so it went off. But definitely, if you see it on streaming, put it on your it's on my radar. I'm gonna watch it at some point.
Awesome. So that takes us to our final category of the night, our Is It category, where we're looking at movies that really, are they a crime? Where is the crime? For me, that came down to white collar crime, because I feel like maybe people get away with white collar crime a little bit more often, or maybe that's just the representation you see. And those crimes seem to affect more people than, say, a bank, which is insured for its losses. A white collar criminal might bankrupt entire corporations and lose entire groups of people their jobs. So we've definitely got some offbeat crimes going on here. And we're going to get started with a movie that I truly love. I'm going to say, screw the tobacco lobby. Like, screw you guys. Like, with a rusty stick. Like, I mean, good God. I love this movie because it's another great Michael Mann film, but this is a hardcore look at what a whistleblower can go through when a company doesn't want their secrets to get out. And it doesn't matter how, the scumbag tobacco lobby knew that they were pushing something that was addictive, knew that it was going to kill people, didn't want the truth to get out. And when a scientist follows his belief system, they're going to demonize him, they're going to ruin him, and they're going to do the same thing to a venerated, decorated journalist and his television program. It's a powerful look at what a whistleblower goes through. And yes, what the tobacco lobby did is a crime and should be criminal. And what these guys were doing should be ennobled. I have a lot of respect for journalism, and this is what, stories like this and people like this who put their careers and names on the line for some element of truth is extremely powerful. Have you seen this one?
Back in 1999.
Okay, yeah. It's a long movie. I will legitimately say my little brother fell asleep in it when I made him go and see it. He was like, "Oh, I like Russell Crowe. Like, he's pretty cool." He had not done Gladiator yet. Was the next Gladiator?
That was 2000, I think. Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, he's kind of cool. I saw that Virtuosity movie or whatever." And then I'm like, he's like super fat in this. Like, he's not cool. He's very awkward. And Pacino is Pacino. He chews a little scenery here and there.
Right.
But I found this movie like completely compelling just because of God, the challenge in truth, right? Is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And another Michael Mann, like, photographed beautifully. Yeah.
That guy's fantastic.
And that, it skips all the other stuff too, with 60 Minutes and the reporting on the whole. Half of the show of the movie talks about what was going on in the Middle East at the time, and seeing Christopher Plummer's character. He's playing Mike Wallace, and the interviews he was trying to get, and how Al Pacino helped him as the producer get those interviews. It's just really well put together. And when you watch somebody, like this producer just get taken to shreds because the tobacco lobby wants to smear them, it's powerful.
Yeah, I need to.
And what a corporation will do with their money rather than being honest, like what they will happily spend all their money on threats and bribes and all these things rather than just own a mistake.
Right.
You know, it's not like anybody was confused. Everybody knew that nicotine was addictive. Everybody knew that these things were bad for you. But to hold on to that lie, I don't think it's addictive. No. What are you talking about? It's easy to quit smoking. It's super easy.
The hell they were going to die on.
Oh, my God. As you're talking about Insider, it makes you think, well, interesting that you would say that.
Funny.
Oh, you like current events too? Well, just buckle up, Buttercup, because we're just getting going here.
Or the fun trend.
By you, because is it a crime?
Is it a crime? So this came up when last week someone in the chat was like, oh, you better have American Psycho in there. And originally it was going to be on my list for psycho killers, like psychopath serial killers. And I rewatched this movie. It's on Peacock. I think great cast. But as I watched the movie, excuse me, I sat there at the end and I go, is it a crime? Did he actually kill anybody in this movie? Like, it's all in his head was how I watched it. And I feel like most people who watch it go, it was all in his head.
Yeah.
And so I said, so it's a serial killer movie about something that doesn't get acted on. So is it a crime? And I think this is probably our most is it a crime movie that it isn't a crime. And I really still enjoyed this movie despite that. John, I know this is your Any Given Sunday when it comes to serial killer movies. So
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this movie because it, for me, more, I've heard people say Usual Suspects amounts to nothing. Like in the end, it's all just a fabrication. We watched a whole movie which this guy just spins a yarn that has no point. It's like pointless. And I'm like, no. That's American Psycho. American Psycho is the pointless one where there literally we see nothing real. Like it's all his mind playing tricks on him. And he doesn't even know what's real or not real anymore. And that amounts to less than zero. There it is. So for me, it just doesn't amount to much. Now it's beautiful to watch, cinematic as hell, creepy, like as all get out. And Reese Witherspoon is gorgeous. But it just doesn't amount to anything for me.
But to me, what I appreciated for it, to me, as it wasn't a crime movie, right? It's a well written, I know the book is, the book gives even more, kind of like, is it, less knowledge of what happens. What I think is beautiful about this is I think Christian Bale's character is, if you look at the movie, if you watch the movie, Christian Bale's character, Justin Theroux, Josh Lucas, Jared Leto, if you don't know who they are as actors, they all look pretty much identical in this movie, which I think is brilliant because I think it really touches on is Christian Bale's character is someone who is desiring so much to be outside the mold of that he is in of this corporation, right? Where like there's a scene where like the guys are getting stressed out because someone has a embossed business card over to them, like, well, mine is cream light and yours is just eggshell, and it's like, who cares? But this is the society that they're living in. Yep. And I think it's a beautiful telling from that aspect of how I think this is could be what catapults someone into a role of a serial killer from the mindset of, I want to do something to stand out because I look like everyone else in this firm, in this organization, right, in this company. Christian Bale, I look like Justin Theroux, I look like Josh Lucas, I look like Jared Leto. I want to separate myself, and if by doing that, that means imagining almost like his mental mindset of, I'm going to kill people, I'm going to do these things. I think that shows the side of society for us where people want to separate them. I feel like there's a large portion that wants to blend in and just go with the flow, and be just another, Christian Bale in the mix of everything. But I think there is that desire to stand out and say, okay, I want to separate myself from others no matter what that looks like. And I think whether it happens or not, I think that's what's more telling for me more than what happened at the end of, did he actually do any of this?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree that the creation of the suburbia white melting pot
Right.
that is far more interesting. I just would argue that it's not enough for me.
Okay.
I mean, I would look at a film like Heathers, which I think does it on a whole better level. The same concept of going to high school and having all the girls be named Heather and all the girls trying to act the same way and not have any real identity or definition. And the way the Christian Slater and Winona Ryder characters dissect that world. Or I look at a movie like Edward Scissorhands, where you have this, all the houses look the same and all the wives go to the corner at the same time and all the husbands leave at the exact same time and drive in and drive out. And the comments that they're all three films, this one included, are making about privileged white culture, I think are very interesting. I just think what you need is a story to put in that. And for me, the story is the story. Once you don't have an Edward or you don't have a Winona Ryder in both of those movies, I guess, to put into that world, somebody who isn't vapid, you miss out. And this movie has only vapid to offer.
Yeah, but I think it works for me because you don't realize that it's all in his head till the end. And so because of that, it works for me from that mindset a little bit more. Okay. I will say, we talked about Heat. We talked about the score in Usual Suspects. We talked about Baby Driver. I said it in Dope. Another movie, great soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, hey, Huey Lewis in the News all day. Right?
I can't listen to Huey and Lewis in the News, though, now because of this.
Right? I want to get to some stuff here by Gore because he is supremely knowledgeable, talking about the
writer. It. Unintended.
What's that? Yeah, he is killing it. Talking about the writer of the book, and then he talked about how controversial it was because of the violence against women.
Yeah.
But he said that the arguments against it fell apart, though, since books by the Marquis de Sade were in bookstores and taught in universities. And I'll mention that the movie about the Marquis de Sade, Quills, with Jeffrey Rush and Kate Winslet and Joaquin Phoenix is a phenomenal movie. And it's like they made a movie about the Marquis de Sade using the Marquis de Sade style. Great movie if nobody has seen it. But yeah, as far as being graphic, but for what purpose, right? Marquis de Sade and Ellis might get along really well. The excess of violence.
Right.
Let's jump to this one because honestly, it's hilarious that we get to see the vapid Christian Bale become the substantive Christian Bale within that same environment. He's no longer the character that Ryan Gosling is basically playing in the movie here. He's playing the more actual substantive, valuable individual in this movie. Firstly, I love The Big Short. I think it's a great movie.
Great movie.
I think it is painfully frustrating to watch because it's all about how our economic systems are flawed, and there doesn't seem to be any way to really solve that flaw. We are excited to see people who can make money off of the flaw and succeed in spite of it, but it doesn't help the rest of us who feel like we're being steamrolled by it. Great performances, beautiful editing and directing by Adam McKay. Really just a phenomenal movie from top to bottom. And yes, I firmly believe there's a shit ton of crime happening in this story, in and around on every single corner of this thing. And the fact that we've had so few people actually get any fines or time served for what they're doing is shocking. I absolutely love this movie, and it's heartbreaking and amazing.
Right. And we're taking everyone down depression lane so far with your first pick, and then
I told you I can attack. I'm attacking big corporations. I'm attacking Wall Street, and I'm going to get to politicians here in just a little bit.
Just you wait, gang. Just you wait.
Hang tough. Hang tough.
Yeah, but the dynamics of these four right here is great. Steve Carell, again, we talked about Steve Carell with Foxcatcher. I think you see this of someone who steps out of the role of acting in such a, it almost is ironic because Adam McKay, you also go like, wait, he directed this? And, he's your Anchorman?
Anchorman, yeah. I mean, I go to Anchorman right away.
But because he's Will Ferrell's best friend kind of thing, and he directed this type of movie. And this was kind of his coming out of guys, I'm more than comedic stuff. And I think Steve Carell does that too. It's very similar to me of when I found out Todd Phillips was directing the Joker movie. Wait, the guy who did Hangover and Old School, you're doing that? And so I think it's just very fitting that there is. But it is funny that Christian Bale's dynamic is completely different in that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I do want to mention the chat though.
Yes.
Wolf.
I disagree with this comment, but I know
Wolf says maybe it's a whiskey talking, but if the soundtrack is a big part of the movie, is the movie really good? And I would question you, Old Wolf. I know you are a comic fan, and I know you would be a big fan of a movie we talked about, the counterpart, at least part 2. I think Guardians of the Galaxy has a huge impact. The music makes a huge impact. The iconic of him wanting to get his headphones, his tape player, the whole mixtape that he made is very compelling part of the movie that makes it enjoyable. So I think if you take away the movie, it still is a good movie, but it enhances it so much. I think,
and I would say film is inherently visual and audio, right? It's those two elements put together. And the visual is made of lighting, editing, and photography framing, right? And the audio is made of sound effects, voices, and music. And you take away any one piece and it can be valuable, like having silence. Take away an element like color, like in Schindler's List, and it adds an element. And certainly, yeah, the soundtrack to a movie can add or subtract a ton.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say, because if you take out the soundtrack on a lot of these movies, would they be as good? No, but that's like saying if you take out one of the actors, or like you said, because it becomes such a critical role in the movie if it's done well.
Right. Then it's how you do it, right? I mean, I think a movie like Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, having the Queen "We Will Rock You" in there is phenomenal. What a crazy, wacky choice.
Which is really funny because I just made my wife watch that the other day, which is really funny. She'd never seen it. And she was like, wait, this is a period Knight's movie, like a night movie? And "We Will Rock You's in this? Wait a second.
Yeah. But I would say it's the same with like The Last of the Mohicans and the beautiful score for that movie, where it just adds such a layer.
Well, even Psycho, like we talked about last week. We didn't talk about the score with too much of Psycho. And it's such an iconic score that even Busta Rhymes, who was an actor in the movie Narcs, I'm bringing it all together. He uses the theme of Psycho in one of his big hits.
Does he?
If you've never listened to, I'll send you a link. Listen to it. It's awesome. Because I think it's one of those, hey, there's no copyright on this if you change a couple things and eminent domain and whatever, but it's awesome.
Duct Tape is commenting on The Big Short being frustrating. I totally understand. And I think that's a big part of white collar crime movies in general. Is these are movies where you feel like you're the victim. I think a lot of times you watch these movies and you feel like the crime is happening to you versus Silence of the Lambs, where you feel like it's happening to somebody else. This feels like it's happening to you.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned it at the beginning of the movie, we put most of these white collar crimes of, are they a crime? Because they get such much a slap on the wrist compared to the bank heist movies that like you said, they're affecting the insurance. Like, oh, we Like a lot of the bank movies, people are like, oh, sure, yeah, rob our bank because it doesn't affect me. We're just going to get insurance pay. Like, go for it. But then movies like The Big Short or the movie that we're going to talk about here very nextly, it affects everyone. And it's like, oh, you get a slap on the wrist. So that's a great transition to the next movie.
Well, and I wanted to mention like Hell or High Water, where you actually see the bank in the bank fight back. Like they're going to get in their pickup trucks and they're going to chase the
and that almost was one that was going to make my list because I really enjoyed it and I thought it was a very interesting take on that.
And I think yeah, you know, it's the reality that bank heists. You know, if you're really thinking it through, the bank is the only thing that suffers. But for something like this, I feel like I'm suffering because of it. And yeah, 8 Men Out, great movie. I think I'm picking crimes that feel like are bigger on a larger scale, but that's maybe just my perspective on it.
Yeah. We could have talked about 8 Men Out. We could have talked about Blue Chips. We could have talked about a handful of other movies that we talked about with sports movies.
But I want you to get in on this one because I'm gonna get really upset because I don't like this guy. Jordan Belfort's a fucking beast.
This is one of those movies that I think is frustrating from the aspect. It makes someone who's so despicable of a character. Martin Scorsese does and Leonardo DiCaprio do such a great job of making him someone that you kind of like, which is frustrating from that aspect because he's a horrible person. I thought this was my first time where I remember going, Leo should have won an Oscar for this because I thought he did such a phenomenal job. The casting of this, what is so interesting about this too is we have another Martin Scorsese movie, someone that you are not high of, and bringing it in. But this I think is so interesting because this isn't his classic. I think like, oh, hey, this worked well for, my movie of Casino, Goodfellas. Let's just keep this still. Let's add more and more to it. I love the breaking the fourth wall in this movie aspect of it. The dynamic between, like I said, Leonardo DiCaprio, I think just does a great job acting. Jonah Hill is phenomenal in his role in this. Margot Robbie, Matthew McConaughey. This is the most like just Rob Reiner. I mean, this is a stacked movie. And it's frustrating because it shows you how easily they preyed upon people who didn't know better. And in this day and age, that's what's so frustrating. Like, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who had grandparents and people who are affected by this, by the penny stocks schemes and things like this. And it's frustrating to see that it is the biggest just slap on the wrist of what he gets for ruining people's lives.
And basically, this is my 2-word review of this movie. It's frustrating. For me, I feel my main takeaway from this movie is that this movie could have been just the trailer, and it's the exact same thing. Like they basically took this trailer, which had the whole movie in it, and they made it 3 hours. Like then that's the main reason why I don't like this movie is you don't need 3 hours to tell this story. You just don't. It's like I saw the trailer and ultimately felt like it's all there. Like I got the whole movie. This guy is a scumbag. I did not go through the journey maybe you went through. I did not feel like Leonardo DiCaprio made me like this guy. This guy is scum top to bottom. I never liked him. I almost was like angry leaving the theater where I was just like, I don't want to spend 3 hours with this guy. Versus, I will happily watch an entire 3 seasons of Hannibal and watch him eat people. And I will spend all those hours with him. And I don't want to spend 25 minutes with this guy, watching him get laid over and over again and do blow and spend people's money.
I think they do such a good job at the first 20, 30 minutes, though, of making him not that character that you see where it takes it to my thought. Now, once he gets to where he's at, I think within 35 minutes, maybe 30, maybe 25 minutes, pretty early on in the movie, he becomes complete dirt, or at least you see that he's complete dirt. And that's where it's like, okay, what made it interesting to me was I thought they did such a good job with the cast of characters around him as well. Leonardo, I think, does a great job of making you hate him too in this. Making him like his scene where he wrecks the car because he's so strung out on drugs and like is crawling up and down the steps, and like he's like, oh, I made it down perfectly, and then like you see how it's recreated. Like I think like that's where I appreciated the longer. Doesn't need to be 3 hours. No, I don't have the time frame for a 3-hour movie, but I to say, oh, I saw the trailer and I was satisfied, wouldn't do it for me. I appreciated what the interactions, the small interactions with Jonah Hill's character, John Bernthal's character, who's like, they're trying to hide the money through the people as they're trying to smuggle. As scummy as he is, that was interesting to me to see how they portrayed stuff and how things happen, because I didn't know the story. And I wanted to see where it went.
I wanted to shout out the comments about Wendy Carlos Beethoven on synthesizer for Clockwork Orange, doing Beethoven on the synthesizer. And then Gore Vidal talking about Wendy Carlos's influence on other people doing electronic art, electronic music.
Right.
Old Wolf saying Guardians of the Galaxy, the music is a character in the movie. I feel that.
I agree, and that's what I think. It made it sound that your comment has made it sound like that. Well, if you have a character in the movie, it takes away from it not being as good. Almost to me, that's what I was just trying to defend.
So for me, like, why did I want this one on the list? Because it's a perfect example of, yes, it's a crime, but is it a crime? Kind of it fits nicely in this category and is a great example of those things. That's why I included it.
Right.
I'll also say the other big frustration for me is the same one that I noticed in The Big Short, when they have that sequence when they're down in Florida talking to the guys who are selling the real estate loans to the strippers. And the guys are like, yeah, man, I sold them 3 or 4, she's got like 7 or 8 loans. Though the guys who do this illegal, stupid, messed up shit watch this movie and they're like, fuck yeah, that's what I want for my life. I want that guy's life. I want to live that. They are happy to see this guy glamorized the way this movie seems to glamorize him. And that frustrates me too, that it's like, they can argue, oh no, we're not glamorizing it because at the end we show it. When you spend like 2.5 hours glamorizing it and then give me like 15 minutes of, yeah, maybe it wasn't such a good idea, it feels disingenuous.
Well, because like you said, this is the epitome of, is it a crime? And we both walked out like, absolutely. But it is gray. Like, you bought this stuff? Like, is it your own stupidity if you send money to a prince in Africa who has come upon a like, is it a crime? Yes, but is it also on you? Like, that's where it's a frustrating aspect, and that's where I feel like there's a difference of walking out of this movie, like you said, where people go, yeah, like, there's probably, those guys are probably doing the same scene, and they're like, one of us.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, this is one of us. Where you like walk out of some of these other movies like Scarface and things, you're like, or even, American Psycho, like, oh, that's a little bit.
Right. I just wish people could catch that and understand it as this isn't good. This is not what we want from our Wall Street.
But you see the sex, you see the drugs, you see we bring a marching band in. Oh, we're playing games in the conference room. And
look at all the hot naked ladies. And
and you get to be with Margot Robbie.
Which, let's be honest, she's in the Big Short too, and I wanted to be in that bathtub. All right. Moving on. Another great Leonardo DiCaprio con artist storyline. And I'll tell you, I think this might be one of the most underrated Steven Spielberg movies. Leonardo playing a con man who was taught at a very young age by a somewhat duplicitous father that there are many ways to end around systems. And he ends up taking those lessons maybe a little too far the wrong direction and living a life of duplicity as one of the all-time great American forgers, forging checks, forging documents, forging all kinds of things to allow himself to lead the life he wants to lead. I don't feel like this movie ever glamorizes what he's going through. I think it does a very good job of holding back on that by showing you what he's going through on the inside in a big way. I love Hanks in this. He's great. This movie just has a ton to offer. So yeah, I'm just a big fan. I think this movie gets overlooked when people talk about Spielberg.
If you guys haven't noticed in the chat yet, I have a strong love affair of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Understandably.
So, which is funny because like my least favorite movie of his is the one that won him an Oscar. I still love The Revenant. I think it's a great movie, but I'm like, really, of all the movies, that's what won you the movie. But
it's all about the competition and the popularity.
I'm happy that he got it though, because I feel like he was one that deserved it. This, you're right though, on the glorification of this, because it gives you the moments where you're like, oh, he's a pilot and he's walking down the airport, with 4 flight attendants with him. But the phone conversations that he has with Tom Hanks, you see that, and Tom Hanks even calls him out on it, basically, like, you're just a sad boy who's trying to find some fill in his life. And, when he becomes the lawyer and, Martin Sheen's daughter and stuff, like he's trying to fill all of these things because he sees the broken relationship that his father had, that he tried. What's so beautiful about this movie is I think Christopher Walken tried to glorify his relationship in this broken movie, and it's almost meta in that aspect of Christopher Walken was trying to glorify this relationship that he had with his wife, which wasn't as great as Christopher Walken always made it out to, or tried to show it out to Leonardo DiCaprio's character. And I think the movie follows that along as well. Like, if you watch it, you go, oh, this is really like, he gets to do all this stuff. It's really, and you go, but is he happy? And that those conversations and the dynamic between DiCaprio and Hanks is great. And the supporting characters, Walken and Sheen, are all fantastic, but it works because of DiCaprio and Hanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they don't share a lot of screen time together. They're often on phones or following behind one another. But the second half of the movie, they spend more scenes together. And I think that's where you pay off all the setup that is the fifth half of the movie. This conversation reminds him of Glenn Ross. Okay. Well, hey, that's always a compliment.
Hey, coffee's for closers.
Right. Yeah. Balls. You need balls. I think Alec Baldwin has the most quotable part in that movie. He's just amazing. That whole monologue.
But what's so great about this show is I'm like, oh, how can we talk about Glenn Ross character? Like Glenn Ross, I think of all these movies. I'm like, oh, how can we talk about these? How can we talk about whatever movie that people bring up in the chat? I'm like, we have to have something on Wall Street or
right. So yeah, this is a great white collar crime. Right. I don't feel like this guy is an example of somebody taking advantage of other people as much as he is the system.
The system, yes.
And so that might be why it's a little more enjoyable to watch and a little less frustrating.
Well, it's more he's forging bank checks, right? Again, so it's not he's not taking money out of grandma and grandpa's pocket. He's not taking the money out of a sucker. He's taking out of possibly people could say a flawed system anyway. So
right.
So it lessens that, like, oh, I don't hate you. You're not as douchey. And you also, but it also helps that you feel for his character. Like you said, I stretched it to say you felt a little bit, at least for the first 20 minutes, for Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street. Like this, you feel for him. Like he's a young kid when he does this. And I think I forget, but it's actually, he's pretty young in real life when he did these things that was based off of.
He started really young.
Yeah. I remember that was a knock on the film, is DiCaprio's character was really too old to be portraying him at the start of when he was doing some of these things.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think they age him pretty well in it, personally. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to find the actor that they want. So
no.
Okay, so I put the last two together, and Gore, I think, mentioned it. I think other people mentioned it. I want to talk a little bit about politicians, specifically Nixon, and I think that the bookends for political corruption movies are this film, All the President's Men, which is a masterpiece in is it a crime? I know he's not a crook, but definitely some crimes were happening here. Followed by this film where he says basically when a president does it, it's not illegal. Which is it was a shocking, bold statement then, and hopefully it feels like a shocking, bold statement now. So I kind of put these two films together as, in a way, as one, looking at, the highest levels of white collar crime, which is a president leading an illegal act, hovering up that illegal act, and then being let off the hook for his crime. Obviously, Pakula's All the President's Men is a really powerful look at journalism and journalistic integrity and the challenges in investigative journalism, especially when everybody's lying to you. I think it's a slow-paced movie. You got to be in for it. But just like Spotlight or other great movies about journalism, it's based on great performances centered around real moments of people with a opportunity to speak, being able to get truth out.
And I think it's just so great to have a movie about, a fictional movie about a president who thinks he's above the law, that wouldn't really happen. And
right. Absolutely. No, I mean, I think it's hard to imagine somebody getting to that level of power and not having it affect them and right. their perception of the world. And I think both of these films are great. I could talk a lot about Frost Nixon as well. I think Frank Langella does a marvelous performance of Nixon. And
shot so beautiful. The interview aspect, Ron Howard does such a good job of shooting this interview, because I didn't grow up in the time where I watched that interview, but I remember watching this movie with my father telling me the impact that interview, the powerfulness of that interview was, and how he was how it was so well portrayed in this movie of it. So
yeah, I mean, I wasn't either. And I had heard of it, but I had never seen it. And to watch it be played out by these two great actors, and then to see the backstory of it, watching Kevin Bacon's sort of political handler and seeing Sam Rockwell and Oliver Platt's, researchers, and the way that is all sort of played for the audience as like a sporting event, where there's 3 nights and, how do you get what you want out of your opponent? What is the chess game that's being played? And it's all really well executed. Yet again, Ron Howard making a movie about something that is a true story that everybody knows how it's going to turn out, just like Apollo 13,
right?
But able to make it 100% riveting.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what, I mean, I kind of wanted to spend a little time on politicians, but the truth is these are really acting films. They're slow paced.
So good though.
Journalistic acting films that highlight, in fact, I think most of the films I picked that I pushed for are highlighting quality journalists versus corrupt people wanting to make more money. And
I feel like the only one that really wasn't journalism was more The Big Short, but that's it really.
Yeah, exactly. I do think there's a lot of value in quality journalism, and I do think it's a thing that's always going to be scarce and always going to be incredibly potent and powerful when it occurs. And these are just two great examples of journalists doing quality work to find truth in a scenario where nobody wants to give it up.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and their acting's fantastic.
Man, I mean, you can't go wrong with Redford and Hoffman. I mean, come on. They were at the peak of their careers.
And Michael Sheen even.
And then Michael Sheen and Rockwell, Bacon, Platt, Toby Jones, Rebecca Hall.
So good.
So I think both of these films are amazing. And if you haven't sort of understood what Nixon's sort of the
would you recommend watching all The President's Men first and then?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's
important. What I would have said, but
it's important, I think, chronologically, just to kind of see what went down. And now that we know who Deep Throat really was, the reveal is there. So you can watch all The President's Men and then read a little bit about the gentleman who was actually the whistleblower there.
Right.
And then use that to go over and see what Frost was able to do in his interview series with Nixon afterwards, when Nixon was trying to rebuild his credibility, and the nation just was glad to see somebody lay it to him.
Right.
Because obviously our government let him get away with it. Gave him the free pass.
Right.
So I think that's it. That is it on crime movies. We showed you a little bit of everything. I hope you found a couple of new movies that maybe you haven't seen before.
Right.
I huge thanks to Greg for making all the slides for the slideshow as usual, and helping you find some of these movies if you haven't seen them on platforms where they're streaming.
Yeah, I like that I had to find one was on Pluto TV. I'm like, is that a real thing? But
all right, now it is. We are done with crime. We have hopefully next weekend coming up a live stream to do a couple of guests coming on to talk about it. I will say it might need to get pushed a couple of weeks because I know next weekend is the Baltimore Comic-Con online, and I am supposed to be helping out with that. So we will try to keep you aware of that. So if it does come up this coming weekend, we might push to November 7th or whatever it is, that first weekend in November after Halloween. But that could possibly go down. I know that next weekend is Baltimore Comic-Con, and I'm helping to run that show with the whole Comic Core group. So that will be going on next weekend. We'll just see how busy my schedule is and what they got to do.
So we'll see what's up in the air, and who knows? It could be even on Halloween. Who knows? We have no schedules. Like
it's all free form at this point.
Right. So we're flexible.
Thank you to those of you in the chat. Yeah. Of course, Glitter and Old Wolf. TJ, Cry Freedom is a great film. Gore Vidal, of course, talking Paul Schrader, who has a bunch of films with gray area subjects and subject matters. Great stuff. So we really appreciate you all hanging out with us, spending the time with us.
You guys just hanging out in the chat, like, it makes the show. Listen, John and I can talk about movies, and if people don't watch it, we're fine with it. But having that interaction with you guys is what makes it entertaining for us, of knowing that we might, drop a movie that you haven't seen before. But more importantly, I'm selfish. I'm happy that you guys are dropping movies like, have you seen this? Have you seen things like this? And, ideas like someone said in the chat, like, we should do a Christopher Walken just show. And I was like,
because we've never really focused on an individual person so much, a subgenre.
Right. So there's so many things, and we haven't even talked about where we're going to go after crime here. And it's exciting. It's fun to talk about movies. So
yeah, absolutely. So do you have anything, Greg, coming up on your channel you want to let people know about? Because I put the link to his channel down below. He's coming up on, was it 370?
It's funny. After the last show, I just posted right before this tonight. I was like, I posted out a tweet. I was like, I'm on the road to 400 after I hit 370. And then like this morning I was at 364. I'm like, apparently I'm on the road to 300. So
you're on your way. Yeah, exactly. I know that.
We're having fun no matter what. So,
please stop.
So yeah, it's funny. You talked about, listen, Old Wolf, you still have a little bit of your handle that you have to finish. So I'm helping you out, son. It's funny. You talked about Baltimore Comic-Con. afternoon interviewed Rylan Grant, who has been huge with helping you guys out with Mainframe, and he's doing Baltimore Comic-Con, and they're doing with him and David Avalone. They're doing their pregame show for the Ringo Awards at the Baltimore Comic-Con next weekend. But he's doing a Kickstarter, and he reached out to me and was like, he was actually the first creator that ever I reached out to and said, hey, do you want to do an interview with me? And he's like, sure. And so then he reached out to me and was like, hey, I have a new Kickstarter. You want to talk about it? I was like, yes. So, which is funny because this comic that he's doing a Kickstarter. So the video, our interview's dropping Monday. It's a longer one because when Rylan and I are hanging out talking, we talk for an hour at least. So it's a longer interview, but his movie, one of the movies that is themed off of this is Heat, which is a heist movie. He's like, oh, it's kind of like Heat, Fargo, The Wire, Criminal, which you talked about on your show a little bit ago, 100 Bullets. These all had a baby. This is kind of where it spawned then.
Nice.
So he's a big part of Baltimore Comic-Con, which is next weekend. So
definitely. Yeah.
So that video is dropping Monday in the morning. So check out the interview. If you don't want to watch it on YouTube because of video, you will watch it, listen to it on Apple Music or iTunes and Amazon and Spotify, all those stuff. Bearded Comic Bro. So I'm gonna have an unboxing on Wednesday instead of Monday because of the interview, and then Friday I will be dropping another episode of Name That Comic Book Character with Mrs. Bearden, and we are doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters.
Ooh!
So for all you fans who are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, we're going to put Mrs. Bearded to the test to see how she does with naming the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters. And what's the best part of the show is who she comes up with naming, what name she comes up with. So that's on the docket. I've got more interviews and things lined up. But Monday, the interview with Rylan. Wednesday will be an unboxing. And Friday is the Name That Comic Book Character, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style. So awesome.
Dang. So lots of good stuff to find over there on the Bearded Comic Book channel, and I put the link down below so you can click right over there and check it out. As far as I've got, I'm mostly on other people's channels in the next week. On Whitewell's channel on Wednesday night, it's the 2-year anniversary of book club. We've been doing that show for 2 years, and we're gonna look back at all the different things we've discussed over 2 years and all the books we crapped on. So it should be a whole lot of fun on Wednesday night.
So how long is that stream? All the books you guys have crapped on?
I don't think we're going to be able to. We might just pick 3 or 4. We're actually going to try to pick our favorites. So we're going to kind of go the other
direction. Your favorite books or your favorite books that you crapped on?
Favorite books.
Okay.
That should be fun. So that's Wednesday night on Alex's channel. You can super chat on his channel, so you can definitely leave him a little.
Speaking of Alex's channel, I see that shirt you're wearing.
9-4 is near mint. And so that'll be on Wednesday night. I'm probably doing a Comic Gories on Monday night. My edited videos have been dropping on Thursday. My pull list videos, they are my least watched videos ever. So I'm sorry if you're not enjoying them, but I've been enjoying dropping edited content again. So if you want to know what's coming out in the future, the week ahead, I'll let you know what books I'm picking up and give you some ideas.
YouTube's such a weird animal.
It's fine. It is what it is. But I have my 100 friends who watch everything I do, and those are the 100 that I make things for.
That's all that matters.
That's the reality right there. So thank you all for coming by. 25,485 books crapped on and counting. And Perry shows up for a joke right at the end.
Well, what I love is Gorgeous also said he can't name all the TNMNT. So I expect you, Gore, to watch the video Friday and see if you can do better than my wife.
I will legitimately say I don't think I can differentiate Bebop and Rocksteady, so that would be a big challenge for me. I know the two of them.
Let's just say someone in the video who's not me does not know how to differentiate between them either.
There you go. All right, so everybody, you have a great night. Thank you all for coming by, and we are going to bounce out of here. So thank you all. All right.